Every day, millions of people walk into Starbucks without giving it a second thought. They order a coffee, wait a few minutes, grab their cup, and continue with their day. For decades, this simple routine helped transform Starbucks from a small coffee shop in Seattle into one of the most recognizable brands on the planet. It became more than a place to buy coffee. It became a symbol of modern life. Students studied there, professionals held meetings there, and travelers searched for the familiar green logo in cities across the world. Starbucks wasn't just selling coffee, it was selling an experience. But today, that experience is being questioned. Customers are complaining about long wait times, higher prices, and crowded stores. Investors have become concerned about slowing sales. Employees have spoken openly about increasing workplace pressure, while competition has become stronger than ever. For the first time in decades, Starbucks isn't simply fighting to grow. It's fighting to rediscover what made people love the brand in the first place. So how did one of the world's strongest consumer brands reach this point? Was it changing customer behavior, rising prices, technology, or did Starbucks become so focused on expansion that it slowly lost sight of its original identity? To answer that question, we have to go back to where the story began. In 1971, Starbucks opened its first store in Seattle, Washington. It looked nothing like the Starbucks we know today. There were no frappuccinos, seasonal drinks, or mobile apps. In fact, the store didn't even serve freshly prepared espresso. Instead, it sold high-quality coffee beans and brewing equipment to people who wanted to make better coffee at home. It was a small specialty retailer with a loyal but limited customer base. Everything changed in the early 1980s when Howard Schultz joined the company. During a trip to Italy, Schultz noticed something that fascinated him. Italian coffee bars weren't simply places to grab a quick drink. They were community spaces where people met friends, held conversations, and took a break from the pace of everyday life. Coffee was only part of the experience. The atmosphere mattered just as much. Schultz believed Americans would embrace the same idea. His vision wasn't just to sell premium coffee, but to create what he called a third place, a space that existed between home and work, a place where people could relax, meet others, read a book, or spend time without feeling rushed. That philosophy became the foundation of Starbucks and helped separate it from every other coffee shop in America. The idea proved remarkably successful. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, Starbucks expanded at an extraordinary pace. New stores appeared across the United States before spreading into Europe, Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East. No matter where customers traveled, they expected the same coffee, the same service, and the same atmosphere. That consistency built trust, and trust built loyalty. By the late 2010s, Starbucks had become one of the world's most valuable restaurant brands. It operated tens of thousands of stores, served millions of customers every day, and generated billions of dollars in annual revenue. Investors admired its steady growth, while customers continued paying premium prices because they believed Starbucks offered something competitors couldn't. But rapid success often creates a hidden danger. As Starbucks grew larger, it also became far more complicated. Every year brought new drinks, more customization options, additional food items, larger rewards programs, drive-through locations, delivery partnerships, and new technology. Individually, each decision made sense. Together, they transformed Starbucks from a coffee company into an incredibly complex operation. One of the biggest changes came through technology. Starbucks became one of the first major restaurant chains to fully embrace mobile ordering. Customers could place an order through the app, skip the line, and collect their drink within minutes. The system was widely praised and helped strengthen Starbucks' already successful loyalty program. Millions of people adopted mobile ordering almost overnight. But success created an unexpected challenge. Stores that had originally been designed for people to relax suddenly had to manage several businesses at once. Employees weren't serving only customers standing at the counter. They were simultaneously preparing mobile orders, drive-through orders, delivery requests, and walk-in purchases. During the busiest hours of the day, dozens of drinks arrived through different channels at exactly the same time. The pressure behind the counter increased dramatically. Starbucks had built its reputation on customization, allowing customers to personalize almost every aspect of their drink. Different milk options, flavored syrups, espresso shots, toppings, temperatures, and preparation methods created hundreds of possible combinations. While customers appreciated the flexibility, every additional choice also increased preparation time and operational complexity. Gradually, the atmosphere inside many stores began to change. Instead of hearing conversations and seeing people enjoying their coffee, customers increasingly found crowded pickup counters filled with mobile orders waiting to be collected. Many people entered the store, grabbed a drink from the shelf, and walked straight back out. The famous third place that had once defined Starbucks slowly became a high-speed pickup station. For years, these changes were easy to overlook because the company continued growing. Revenue remained strong, new stores kept opening, and millions of loyal customers returned every week. But beneath the impressive financial results, small cracks were beginning to appear. The very innovations that had fueled Starbucks' growth were also changing the customer experience, and those changes would soon collide with an economy that was becoming far less forgiving. That turning point arrived just as the global economy began to change. Inflation pushed the cost of everyday life higher. Rent increased, groceries became more expensive, fuel prices climbed, and household budgets became tighter. Consumers didn't suddenly stop buying coffee, but they became far more selective about where they spent their money. A $5 or $6 coffee that once felt like a small daily luxury started feeling like an expense worth reconsidering. Starbucks had always positioned itself as a premium brand, and for years customers were willing to pay that premium because they believed they were receiving more than coffee. They were paying for consistency, convenience, and an atmosphere that couldn't easily be replicated. But as prices continued to rise, many customers began asking a simple question. If the experience no longer felt special, was it still worth paying extra? At the same time, Starbucks faced stronger competition than ever before. Independent cafes attracted customers looking for handcrafted drinks and unique environments. Fast food chains invested heavily in improving their coffee quality while keeping prices lower. Convenience stores upgraded their coffee programs, offering surprisingly good products at a fraction of the cost. Consumers suddenly had more choices, and those choices were better than they had been only a decade earlier. For the first time in years, Starbucks was no longer the obvious answer. It wasn't losing all of its customers, but it was losing something equally important: its uniqueness. The company that had once defined premium coffee was now competing in a market where premium coffee had become common. Inside Starbucks stores, employees were experiencing a different kind of challenge. Mobile ordering continued to grow, delivery services became more popular, and drive-through traffic remained strong. Instead of replacing traditional orders, these new systems simply added more work. Baristas were expected to prepare dozens of highly customized drinks while serving multiple streams of customers at the same time. During peak hours, every minute mattered, and even small delays could quickly create long wait times. Many employees argued that the pace of work had changed dramatically compared to previous years. Preparing coffee was no longer the only responsibility. They were expected to manage digital orders, maintain speed targets, interact with customers, and keep stores running efficiently, often under significant time pressure. These concerns eventually became part of a much larger public conversation about staffing, scheduling, and working conditions. As more stores voted to unionize, Starbucks found itself facing one of the most significant labor challenges in its history. Supporters argued that employees deserved a stronger voice in workplace decisions, while Starbucks maintained that it preferred working directly with employees rather than through unions. Regardless of which perspective people supported, the headlines marked a noticeable shift in public perception. Starbucks was no longer being discussed only as a successful coffee company. It had become part of a broader national conversation about work, wages, and corporate culture. Meanwhile, investors were beginning to notice that growth was slowing. Starbucks remained profitable and continued generating billions of dollars in revenue, but investors rarely focus on where a company is today. They focus on where it is heading. Slower sales growth in key markets raised concerns about whether Starbucks could continue delivering the rapid expansion that shareholders had come to expect. This created a difficult balancing act. Raising prices too aggressively risked driving customers away. Reducing prices could hurt profit margins. Expanding too quickly could make operations even more complex, while slowing expansion might disappoint investors. Every decision involved trade-offs, and there was no easy solution. Perhaps the biggest challenge facing Starbucks wasn't financial at all. It was emotional. The company's greatest competitive advantage had never been coffee alone. It was the feeling customers associated with the brand. People didn't build daily habits around Starbucks simply because of caffeine. They returned because the stores felt welcoming, familiar, and dependable. But as stores became busier, menus became larger, and operations became more focused on speed, some customers began feeling that something had changed. The experience that had once encouraged people to stay was increasingly encouraging them to leave as quickly as possible. Convenience had improved, but connection had weakened. Recognizing these challenges, Starbucks began looking inward. Company leaders acknowledged that the business needed to simplify operations, reduce unnecessary complexity, improve service times, and bring greater focus back to the customer experience. The goal wasn't to abandon technology or stop innovating. It was to ensure that innovation supported the brand instead of replacing it. That realization represented one of the most important moments in Starbucks' history. For decades, growth had been the company's greatest strength. Now, Starbucks faced a different challenge entirely, proving that it could become a better company, not simply a bigger one. In 2024, Starbucks made one of its biggest leadership changes in years by appointing Brian Niccol as its new chief executive officer. Niccol had built a reputation for improving restaurant brands by simplifying operations, strengthening customer experience, and focusing on long-term growth instead of short-term complexity. His arrival signaled that Starbucks understood the challenges it faced and was prepared to rethink how the business operated. Rather than promising a dramatic transformation overnight, the company focused on returning to the fundamentals that had made Starbucks successful in the first place. Leadership spoke about simplifying the menu, improving service speed, making stores feel more welcoming, and restoring the coffeehouse atmosphere that had gradually faded over time. The message was clear. Starbucks didn't need to reinvent itself. It needed to reconnect with its original purpose. Whether these efforts will fully succeed remains uncertain. Starbucks is still one of the largest coffee companies in the world, serving millions of customers every day across thousands of stores. It continues to generate billions of dollars in revenue, and its brand remains one of the most valuable in the restaurant industry. The challenges it faces are significant, but they are not impossible to overcome. Companies of this size have recovered before, and Starbucks still possesses enormous advantages, including global recognition, customer loyalty, and one of the strongest digital ecosystems in the industry. At the same time, the competitive landscape has permanently changed. Consumers today have more choices than ever before. Independent coffee shops continue to attract customers seeking unique experiences, while major restaurant chains and convenience stores have improved the quality of their coffee offerings. Winning customers is no longer just about serving a good cup of coffee. It is about creating an experience that people believe is worth paying for. That may be the most important lesson from Starbucks' story. Businesses rarely fail because of a single bad decision. More often, they drift away from the ideas that made them successful. Small compromises accumulate over time. A little more complexity here, a little more focus on efficiency there, a few more products, a few more processes. Individually, each decision seems reasonable. Collectively, they can reshape an entire company. Growth itself is not the enemy. In fact, every successful business wants to grow. The challenge is ensuring that growth strengthens the core of the business instead of weakening it. As organizations become larger, they naturally become more complicated. More employees, more products, more technology, and more markets all create opportunities, but they also create distance between a company and its customers. If that distance becomes too great, even the strongest brands can begin to lose the emotional connection that once made them special. Starbucks changed the global coffee industry forever. Before its rise, coffee was largely viewed as a simple commodity. Starbucks transformed it into a premium experience and convinced millions of people that coffee could represent comfort, identity, and community. Countless competitors followed the model it created, fundamentally changing consumer expectations around the world. Few companies can claim to have reshaped an entire industry in the way Starbucks did. Ironically, that success also created one of its greatest challenges. The premium coffee culture that Starbucks introduced inspired thousands of competitors to improve their own products and customer experiences. The standards Starbucks established eventually became the standards that everyone else worked to match. In many ways, the company helped create the highly competitive market it now operates in. The next chapter of Starbucks will not be determined solely by quarterly earnings reports or stock prices. It will be decided every day inside its stores. Every interaction between a barista and a customer, every drink prepared with care, every welcoming environment, and every reason a customer chooses to return will shape the company's future. Financial performance will always matter, but customer trust is built one visit at a time. Perhaps that is why Starbucks remains one of the most fascinating business stories of our time. It is not a story about failure, nor is it a story about inevitable decline. It is the story of a company confronting the consequences of its own success while trying to preserve the values that made it extraordinary. The question is no longer whether Starbucks can continue selling coffee. It almost certainly can. The real question is whether it can once again become the place where people want to stay, not just the place where they stop. In business, reaching the top is an extraordinary achievement. Staying there is something else entirely. Every generation of great companies eventually faces a defining moment, a point where past success no longer guarantees future leadership. For Starbucks, that moment has arrived. The decisions it makes today will determine whether future generations remember it as the company that reinvented coffee twice, or as the company that slowly forgot why the world fell in love with it in the first place.